Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Learning Tech Showcase, Personalized Learning Paths, sponsored by Biz Library, Open Sesame, and the Regis Company. I'm Avery Vogt, Events Manager at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you could all join us today. Before we get started, I would like to go over just a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. All questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. Once this session ends, a brief survey will appear in your browser. Please take a moment to share feedback on today's event. And as always, all of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to welcome you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's showcase, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and our podcasts. We'd also love to hear what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platforms and let's continue the conversation. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's speaker, Charlie Chung, VP of Sales at the Regis Company. He'll also be joined by Lance Healy at the end of the session for some Q&A. Charlie, we are super excited to have you here today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Avery. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you here today on a Monday. I hope everyone's week is starting off well. I'm very excited about this topic and our time together, and there's a lot to cover. So I'd like to dive right in. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just one moment here. All right. So our session is on the next era of personalized learning runs on AI simulation. So there's a lot in this title. We need to unpack it. The first thing I want to do is to ask all of you a question. In the context of learning, what does personalization mean to you? Can you just share in the chat your thoughts on this? I'll give people just a few moments here. I see curated to your needs. That word curation is a very interesting one. What else? Adaptive. Okay, tailored to interests. Learning paths based on the person and the organization. Focus. Learning for my skills. Different styles, perhaps, or different approaches based on how the person best learns. Okay. Dynamic to the learner, predictive, these are all terrific. What I'd like to talk about is take a little bit of a step back and talk about where we've been. Personalization has been talked about in the learning space for quite some time. And looking back over it, there's a few different trends that I've noticed. And that really is around what we mean by personalization. In the early days, there was, especially in the realm of online learning, which is where the promise of personalization really, is supposed to drive a lot of scale. In the early days, we had adaptive courseware. And so the personalization was on the sequence. Maybe there's a branching path in online learning. Next, we did enter a phase where personalization was all about recommendations. I think this was due largely to the success of Netflix. And then people thought, well, gee, Netflix is so engaging. How can we make learning like that? I know, we'll have a recommendation engine, and we'll recommend just the most amazing thing that people will want to learn next. So that was another way to think about personalization. And then things got a little bit more sophisticated where we talk about pathways, and those pathways that are dependent maybe on a job category or competency model. Maybe they're even pathways tied to individual skill development. There seems to be a lot of potential for that. And then finally, up to the present day, there's personalization with regard to interaction, where content is generated in real time. And this we see with the rise of the LLMs, which I'm sure we've all, had a lot of experience in interacting with. But what I wanted to point out here is that personalization has been thought about in different ways. And each of these, we tended to over-index on them, and they turned out to be fads. Not that they're not valuable, they are very valuable, but at each of these points, the industry sort of thought, this is the golden definition of personalization. Now we have arrived, now everything is possible. And what we've ended up finding is that these are all just stepping stones, and that we should be careful about, looking to one definition as a fad. All right. But with the rise of LLMs, the question that I want to ask is, have we achieved the personal Aristotle? Back in 1966, so over 50 years ago, 60 years ago, to be exact, here's a quote from, it's a very famous quote from an early education technologist. Millions of school children will have access to what Philip of Macedon's son Alexander enjoyed as a royal prerogative, the personal services of a tutor as well informed and responsive as Aristotle. So my question is, have we got there? Have we reached that point with LLMs? Now we have AI, chatbots, agents, whatever you want to call it, that are actually much more knowledgeable than Aristotle and can provide a much more real-time feedback. This is the definition of that magical teaching machine, if you followed that, that theme in EdTech. Have our dreams come true? Have we finally reached the end of what we need for personalization? Of course, if you look back at the trends, my answer to that is no, not yet. And we need to be cautious about what we expect from this as well. How do we think about these trends? Well, we can always go back to learning science, because learning science is based on how our brains work and learn, and that hasn't changed for tens of thousands of years. One of the key concepts in learning science is this idea of cognitive load. And as you can see from this chart, you want to have a moderate cognitive load, but you've got problems if there's too little or too much. Too little and you're not stretching people. Too much and people start to shut down, right? So how does this apply to these AI agents that we have now? Well, if we're relying solely on real-time conversation, here's what's happening. Time pressure, that doesn't leave any time for reflection on really chewing and thinking through things. It's a lot of effort to be constantly interacting with an agent. What am I going to type next? What am I going to say next? That creates cognitive load. And also the unpredictability of the outcomes. You have to be ready for everything. So this can be quite cognitively taxing. All that's to say, I don't think we have reached the end goal of personalization yet, but this is an important step. So what would I recommend, or what would I suggest? And that is that we need a wide range of options and things. And the AI so-called conversation or role play plays an important part in that. And I've presented here a continuum of simulation activities. And these range from, I've got it ordered on the left, from lower cognitive load or engagement, on the right to higher cognitive engagement. You can see on the left we have some of those response choices, branched scenarios. AI role play is definitely higher cognitive engagement, but there are things that can go even beyond that when you put them together. So decision making, where there are consequences, when you trigger metacognitive reflection, why did you make that choice? What do you think the impact will be on the future? And then finally, on the upper right here, on the right, simulation story arcs, where there's a story that builds over time, and there's a series of a deep, rich, immersive situation where maybe you do have some AI role play interactions, but you have other types of context as well. The whole idea here is that if you want to actually change mental models and get people to think differently and get whole new levels of capability, you need to engage people cognitively in a variety of ways, and in ways that don't overly exhaust them cognitively in order to reach that point. So what we would propose is to use a combination of all of these. That's where the art comes in instructional design. These elements are just tools and techniques to get there. All right, would like to pause for a moment and put up a poll. Just to answer this question, how effective do you believe simulations are as a learning approach? I would love to get a sense of how people are thinking about this. We'll give you just 10 seconds to answer here, 10, 15 seconds.
All right, everyone, I'm going to give you just about 3 more seconds here and I'll share the results.
All right, we've got a lot of participation on this poll. And feel free, Avery, to share the results. I think we're converging here.
Just shared this with everyone.
All right. So you can see actually half of us felt that these simulation approaches are very effective across a wide range of learning goals. And we've got some that feel that it might be more limited in application to maybe capstones or certain types of training. All right, terrific. This does correspond to what we see out there as well. Let me talk and share a little bit about our approach at Regis and where we think things are headed in our space. So in terms of personalization and simulations, how do these two things really interact? Well, we think simulation data, if you have richer data, you can personalize better. That's really the bottom line. And this phrase that we're talking about here, behavioral telemetry, that is, if we present users, people, with an array of simulations across that continuum that you saw and get at these questions around how they make choices, decisions, trade-offs, gain insight into their rationale, figure out what they're prioritizing, get a glimpse into the nuance and judgment that they're applying to that nuance, then we have the data that we need to really personalize, because what we're doing is we're actually peeking into their mental models. So these 3 steps and various solutions have made progress across these steps. But 1 is we want to capture that rich decision-making data. 2 is we want to discern mental models from that data. And then 3 is personalize what comes next. Now that personalized could mean a range of things. It might mean things that are developmental, things maybe that get communicated to people's managers or get communicated to them themselves. Maybe it's spinning up new learning experiences to help people break past their mental model stumbling blocks. We don't believe anybody has reached this full level of going through all of these steps. All we can do is show you the progress we've made, particularly in number 1 and number 2 here. So that's what I'd like to focus on next. I'm going to show you Regis Company's SimGate learning platform. It's a platform that allows you to create rich and diverse simulations very quickly and easily. I'll give you a glimpse into what that could look like from a learner perspective. And then I'll spend a few minutes on a report that shows some of that insight from the behavioral telemetry and the peek into the mental models that I described. All right, we'll do that in the next 12 minutes or so, and then try to leave a couple minutes for questions at the end. All right, first let me show you the learning experience. I'll show this to you in a preview mode here. But imagine a simulation here where we are working for a company called Projexa, and they are trying to teach us skills related to consulting. So let me walk through a little bit of this.
Welcome to Projexa's engagement management simulation. I'll serve as your guide throughout this experience, along with your coach, David. Please be sure to review our role, goals, and case materials before starting.
Okay, so what are those? Let's take a look here. You can see that for our company, Projexa, Our simulation is around this epic AI project. There are some goals there. We see there's some additional context, including people that we're going to come across. And these are, maybe avatars that we will encounter. We've got our client, Jonathan. We've got Jonathan's team lead, Judy. And we have internal people. We have Laura, our boss, and Ruby, a team member of ours. So you can already see the rich context that's being set up here between our client and our internal team. As we go through, we'll be able to see how closely are our decisions getting us towards the perspective of these various players. And the overall purpose will be to learn the trade-offs and how to maximize really these particular metrics. And we'll see how we did at the end. We also have a coach that's available to us, but we'll encounter David, and we'll encounter him along the way. All right. First, a little bit of setup to the situation.
Simulation, you are a manager working close with team members on the critical Epic AI client project. As you go through the simulation, the impact of your decisions will show up in the scorecard. The goal is to keep client satisfaction high while balancing profitability and team morale. Let's get started. And remember, there are always trade-offs when balancing the needs of clients, team members, and the financial health of the project.
Okay. We're going to go into a series of scenarios then that we have to face while we are on this project. Let's start with the first.
I need your help. The resources I hope to assign to this project got reassigned. Can you ask your team to take on those tasks for me so we can keep on schedule?
Okay. This, if you recall from our case, is Jonathan, our client. So we've got this request from the client, and what do we do in response to this request? Well, this is a significant amount of extra work for us. Do we do the work? Do we not do it? Do we try to charge for it in this particular case? Let's explore some of these options.
I'm already overwhelmed with our workload, and I can't imagine taking on more at this point.
So we have input from our team member if we simply decide to do the work. What if we say we can't do the work?
This is an important client to us, and they have a lot more work for us to help them with in the future.
All right. So you can see the richness of this. We've been introduced to these characters. We have this tension between the client, our internal team, and our leadership. This is the kind of situation that causes people to slow down in their thinking and really chew on these trade-offs and really think about what the right decisions are in this situation. In some ways, the best scenarios are ones where maybe there is no clear, correct answer, but the point is to understand the trade-offs that you have to make. All right, let's move on. Here we have another exercise. And we have our coach, David, on the right that's joining us.
Hello, Charlie. I'm David. My expertise lies in project management, and I'm here to help you navigate real-world leadership challenges. What questions do you have for me today?
You can see my exercise is to allocate staffing between partner, manager, and staff hours. That's this element of the scenario I am supposed to work on. Meanwhile, I can access my coach, David. David, I do have some questions. First of all, is there anything I should consider in terms of partner versus manager hours besides the billing rate implications?
What questions do you have for me? And regarding partner versus manager hours, beyond billing rates, consider the impact on client perception and internal team development. More partner hours can boost client confidence, but may strain our margins and limit opportunities for junior staff to grow. Conversely, relying heavily on staff hours improves profitability, but risks client satisfaction if they feel they aren't getting senior level attention. It's a balance between immediate client happiness and long-term team capability and financial health.
All right, you can see here that we've got a combination. We've got the real-time avatar, which is terrific, and maybe you want this full avatar. Maybe it's still a little bit uncanny, and you want just the voice. But I'll tell you, these avatars are getting better every 3 months, so they will continue to surprise us. But you can see the combination between this more technical simulation exercise in terms of staffing and the real-time avatar, and you can see how both together can be much more powerful than either on its own. Think of the data that you get as we go through and answer these questions and make all of these decisions. All right, let's move on. Here is another challenge that we're faced with, a last-minute feature request. What do we do? Stick to the plan, make it happen, adjust the scope. I'm going to pick make it happen here.
The client will be happy, but how about the team? How will this impact the organization, who may be needing resources from this project?
Okay, so we have our guide prompting us. And look at these questions that I'm being asked now. What do I think the impact will be if I make it happen on client satisfaction? Well, that's obviously going to be high. What will it do for profitability? I know it will ding our profitability, no doubt about that. What will it do for firm impact? Is it going to have a negative impact because I'm hurting profitability? Is this going to have a positive impact because I'm doing something that builds client loyalty? Really probably depends on the situation or the scenario. But think about the insight that you're going to gather when you can get people to think in this way and really consider this. We've got this captured as data, and we're getting a peek into the mental model of how they think about the trade-off between satisfaction and profitability. Okay, we move on.
There are several issues with the Epic AI project. Laura asked you to meet with the client to understand the issues and to see what options you have to extend the timeline. Who would you like to meet with?
Okay, so I can choose to meet with Judy, who is the client team lead, or Jonathan, who is our main client. Let me pick Jonathan here. And then I see that this is a situation that has popped up here. Jonathan is actually saying we should meet in person tomorrow. Judy can talk to you now. Now it sounds like the stakes are getting ratcheted up if I'm going to be talking with Jonathan tomorrow. So it makes sense to meet with Judy. We'll give this just a moment here.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Judy. I'm working with Jonathan on the Epic AI project. I understand you're leading the project and wanted to check in. How are things progressing from your perspective?
Things are just fine, Judy, but I do want to raise with you an issue that we have been getting some changes in scope, and I think we need to have Jonathan understand that there are implications for this, not just for our current deliverables, but really for our bigger long-term deliverables. Do you have any suggestions on how we can approach this conversation with Jonathan tomorrow?
I understand the concern about scope changes impacting both current and future deliverables. It's crucial to have a clear discussion with Jonathan about these implications. Perhaps we can outline the specific impacts on quality and timeline, and then present those to him. How do you feel about that approach?
I feel that approach makes sense. I think, but maybe it's better to start with really looking big picture at what some of the causes of some of these changes are, because if they keep happening, it is going to jeopardize our project. So maybe we should start there.
I understand your concern about the project's timeline, Charlie. Quality is crucial for us, and we need to ensure that any changes don't compromise that. Let's focus on how we can address these issues effectively.
So I'll stop there, but you can see what we're doing here is we're actually interacting with Judy in order to prepare for a conversation with Jonathan, right? This is exactly what would happen in a real client consulting project where you're preparing, and this could be, you're sort of practicing or trying out how you're going to frame that conversation with someone else. That could lead to something like this, where we think about how we would tee up the conversation with Jonathan. And in this particular case, based on that conversation with Judy, I'm thinking that we really need to start with the framework and talk about prioritization at a high level before we start talking about, individual, issues and what we should do about them. So I'm thinking that we need to do things that are a little bit more systemic based on this conversation with Judy and preparing for Jonathan. All right. Then this is, we might have an in-person meeting here, but this could be entirely online as well. And you can see at the end, what we have are indicators on how we did across these 3 metrics that we talked about. And we can get other feedback from, our interactions with Judy, Jonathan, and the like. So I wanted to show this. This is a specific example of a program that's, could be it's just a demonstration program for a consulting project. But you can imagine any kind of deep, rich role or task or skill where you can create these kinds of scenarios chained together in an overarching story to really immerse people into that business context. All right. The final thing I'll show in the last couple minutes is some of the, I keep talking about the data that we can gather, and I'll show you what we can produce as a result of that data. This is a skills intelligence report, and this is based on the detailed data from the simulation. You can see here there's an executive summary written in the language of the business, talking about folks who are client ready and their proficiency bands. You can see there's a human story behind the numbers that are also, insight is also being provided on. If we go to the actual decisions, this particular report was based on 6 rounds, each of which had 3 simulations, but we collected a total of 65 data points. And this is what gives us that confidence to really indicate something like this, which is, of those 63 people, how many of them are ready to perform in this new role? We can see that 6 of them are fully ready independently. The vast majority of them are ready with supervision, and that's really, maybe the purpose of this course. And 5 of them aren't ready at all, and something else needs to be tried. What about mental models? In this particular case, there is a mental model framework that's being applied here for consultants, where they tend to either be better communicators and lack problem-solving skills, or the reverse. It is hard to get both of those at once very strongly. There are some folks who do both and some who are good at neither. And you can see that participants have been categorized in these types. And this is based on all of the insights around their choices and the trade-offs and the rationale behind those trade-offs. This is what gives us a peek into their mental model. And to back this all the way up to our next era of personalization, this is where we are. We are able to capture deep, rich decisions across a range of simulation types, which most of us feel can be very valuable for learning. We can discern mental models from the data that we have, and we're still working on, and I think the industry is still working on, how do we take that rich behavioral telemetry and personalize what comes next. Let me conclude there. I want to thank all of you, and let me hand it over to my colleague Lance to see if there are any questions.
Sure. There's been a couple of questions in the chat, which I've addressed. One other question here. How do I show my CLO or executive team that personalized simulation-based learning is worth the investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that people have thought for a long time is, hey, these things are great, but they're really tedious and expensive. hard to maintain, and technology has gotten a lot better. That's much easier to do now. The ROI can be much more straightforward because you can take approaches that are similar to the level of effort that would be required to create a strong e-learning course. And you can get something close to what I showed. So I think the ROI case is going to be easier with that. I think that for business leaders, that readiness report is really the bottom line. That's great that you've got satisfaction. That's great that you've got engagement. That's great that you can show me improvement in knowledge checks. But can you tell me if people are ready for the role that they've been hired into or ready to take on the next level role in the organization? That is often the most pressing question that people are asking. Reports like that can help.
One more quick question here, Charlie from BP. He's been in the chat asking a couple questions here. Is it possible to iframe the SimGate portal into another learning program, say like an e-learning courses specific page?
It is technically possible. Lots of things can be iframed into other things. I think the real question is what is the user flow and what is the user experience that you want? Nowadays with technology, so many things are possible, and it really allows a lot of scope to decide what is it that I want people to experience. For Regis's customers, most of them use an LMS to launch and track these deep, rich simulations, and the results come back. But really, I think in this day and age, the user experience has to be pristine. It has to be consumer grade for people to even, consider it something worth engaging in.
Okay, thank you all. And looks like we got Avery back here.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. This is really an awesome session. Thank you, Charlie, for your time today. I am just going to wrap us up with a couple reminders. So yes, thank you to our dynamic speakers and our sponsors, Biz Library, the Regis Company, and Open Sesame. As a reminder, you should have received an email this morning with resources from the Open Sesame team. They unfortunately had some speaker conflicts for today's event, so this is our last session. All of today's sessions are pre-qualified for a credit hour by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. And if you are a CPTM, this event qualifies for 5 credit hours, so don't forget to put it in your tracker. And if you have any questions, reach out to courses@trainingindustry.com. Some additional resources for everybody out there. I would love for you all to meet us in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2026 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address your most pressing learning challenges. And if you're looking to elevate your L&D career, revolutionize your training programs with AI integration, and drive impactful results, learn to use AI for skills gap analysis and personalized learning pathways and tips for ethical AI use in L&D with the AI Essentials for Training Managers certificate. Both those URLs are showing here on the slide. And one last reminder that a survey will pop open in your browser upon exiting, and we would really welcome your feedback. So thanks again, Charlie and Lance, for your time today. And thanks to you all for joining, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks, everyone.